Hello and welcome to the Blues Kind Show, the show for kind blues. With free agency closing on Friday and the last 3 days of the trade period lying ahead of us, I thought it would be a good time to look back at Carlton's move so far with maybe a couple of predictions for the future. I wanted to thank everyone who has been watching my shorts. It was a little bit of an experiment for the channel, so I'm really appreciative of all the engagement, and their numbers were alright, so I thought, something definitely worth doing for these sort of smaller updates until I can get around to doing a bit of a longer video. Just wanted to say thank you to a pal in a Carlton Discord that I belong to, Mickey D's, who gave me a little bit of guidance on what I should do in this video. There's a bigger topic that I want to handle, but I think I might need to leave it for another video. Today, it's all about trades. Let's leave it with that. So thanks again, mate. If you like what I'm doing, please give me a like or a subscribe. If you want to push back, engage, agree with me even, give me some ideas, feel free to leave a comment. Otherwise, let's get into it. Before we get into the moves themselves, I wanted to just acknowledge the free agency picks that have come in. An end of first for Jack Silvani, which we knew about at the time of my last long form video. And then we also got a band 1 compensation pick for Tom De Koning, which is currently pick 10. At the time of my last video, I did not have the Tom De Koning combo pick available to me, so just wanted to acknowledge it now. Therefore, our current draft hand, as at today's date is the 12th of October, is pick 10, pick 22, pick 54, pick 67, and pick 72. So, let's get into the done deals. The first deal that Carlton was able to tick off was for ruckman Liam Reidy from the Fremantle Football Club. Carlton gave up picks 50 and 68 in this year's draft to get Reidy, pick 53 and pick 71. I said in my short, I'm really happy with this trade. I think it will instantly bolster our ruck stocks for us. He's 25 years of age, 204 centimetres, and built like a brick outhouse. And even if he's not ready to take over from Pitto, he might need a little bit more development or to be eased in, or Pitto, I think probably deserves to be our starting ruckman. He's definitely able to provide us with excellent depth. He won a waffle best and fairest in 2024. Oh no, pardon me. He won a waffle flag in 2024, pardon me, and the BNF for his team this year just gone, 2025. So at the state level, he's more than capable enough. He's been hidden behind Luke Jackson and Sean Darcy, so it's very reasonable that he hasn't been getting a lot of time in the AFL. He's only played the 3 games because, let's be serious, as first choice ruckman go, Fremantle have probably the best combination in the league. I think he has a really high floor in terms of what he's able to give us. However, I think because he hasn't had the opportunity and he's shown really high level performance in the state league, for ruckman, that is something that does often translate. A lot of players that sort of get stuck between state leagues and the AFL get stuck because of the pace of the game. For ruckman, especially given it starts in tight, in a hit-out situation, if they're physically robust enough and willing to throw their weight around, that's a transition that can be made a little bit easier when compared to other positions. So I think that he could be the sort of guy that at worst, he's able to come in a pinch if Pitto's out for a few weeks or whatever. But a good result could be he could be someone like Lloyd Meek, who funnily enough was also at Fremantle at the same time as Liam and was also stuck behind Sean Darcy, and then they brought Luke Jackson in as well, so that sort of sealed that off. But Lloyd Meek has since become one of the best rucks in the league. Darcy Cameron is also somewhat similar. He was up at Sydney, was relatively unknown, comes to Collingwood. They had a need for him after wanting to move on Brodie Grundy, and he's flourished into an excellent ruckman. I think Liam Reidy is right in that spot. As per what I just touched on in terms of the value of the trade itself, we slid down 3 spots in terms of our 3rd and 4th round picks. That's basically nothing. We essentially got Liam Reidy back for almost identical picks to the ones that we already have. In my mind, we've basically given up nothing. Therefore, for a guy that should come in and add depth to a position that we need, and because he has a decent amount of potential and upside to develop into more than just a depth player, and because we gave up basically nothing for him, for me, big tick for this trade. Excellent start to the trade period, Carlton. Then we move on to Campbell Chesser. And for those who know, it's nice to see him wearing an appropriately sized jumper in this one. If you don't know, go and look up what the Eagles gave him on draft night a couple of years ago. So, we've acquired Campbell, the guy who was pick 14 in the 2021 draft, for pick 41 in this year's draft. Clearly he has some talent, because in a draft that was very deep, like the top 10 included guys like Dacos and Darcy, Nasiah Wanganeen-Miller was taken around the same pick as Campbell Chesser, guys like Jai Amos, like it's a very, very good draft, and he was 14th after having some injury interruption in his junior years, so clearly has some ability. I'm not really going to judge his time and development at West Coast because they played him a lot in the forward line, especially as a forward pocket, and that's not really his natural position. As a junior, he's played a lot on a wing and as a midfielder. He said as much on Trade Radio that we had pitched to him to come back and play wing for us, and he's an excellent runner in terms of repeat speed and high-end speed. So he's got really, really good endurance, and he's very, very quick. If you haven't seen it, look up his chase down against the Eagles. So no, pardon me, it was for the... What am I saying? He has a famous chase down tackle highlight. It was against Adelaide, that's right. Very much worth looking at just to sort of get an idea of his athleticism. I'd probably recommend looking at his junior highlights a bit more than the rest of his Eagles highlights, for the main reason that, you know, a midfielder winger getting trapped in the forward line on a bad team, not the most relevant highlights of all time. But his juniors highlights playing for Sandringham and I believe Vic Metro, not Vic Country as well, also tell a lot of the story as to what sort of player he might be able to become for us. If he can get his body right, I think he addresses a clear area of need, given he goes really well by foot and is a really strong runner. Frankly, in a different environment, you know, compared to the Eagles, Carlton is a little bit of a better run club at the minute, and our prospects are a bit better, and we're not relying on the youth quite so much. He'll also be back in his home state. I think he could be anything. That also includes potentially being a bust, but given he obviously has a lot of AFL-ready traits and has a very obvious pedigree with his draft, I think he was more than worth the risk, given all we gave up for him was pick 41. In a year where that pick likely might just be used for bidding points for father-son or academy players. So, getting a guy that a couple of years ago was a first-round pick with a third-round pick, I love the idea of it. Because I'm not as confident that he'll be able to contribute in the same ways I think Liam Reidy would, I'd give this a small tick, but a tick nonetheless. Ultimately, I think he's probably got a lower floor than someone like Liam Reidy, but given the traits he has, maybe a higher ceiling. Worth a risk. I think at this stage in our list development, it's very much worthwhile doing it. The third player that we brought in was Ben Ainsworth from the Suns for a future second round pick, as well as Corey Durden. Firstly, just wanted to say thanks, Corey Durden, for all your service. I always felt like people were quite harsh on him. I'm not saying he was a world beater, but I thought he showed a lot of flashes, but had a really hard time putting it together. A big part of this is I think a lot of our small forwards have a hard time putting it together, and a thing they have in common is obviously the position they play. I don't think the game plan that we have run with is necessarily helpful for small forwards to have consistent contributions. In addition to that, Corey was a regularly injured player, and because of that, I think that probably, it interrupted not only his development, but when you have that lack of continuity from week to week, maybe you play 2 games, then miss a game, and then you come back and you're the sub. Like, it's hard to sort of get a flow in the role that you're trying to play. And I feel like that may have prevented him from having better output. We saw some games where he did a lot right. I always liked him. I'm not saying I thought he was going to be an All-Australian or anything, but I thought he was a nice player, and he seems like a really honest and decent bloke. So I'm very glad for him that he gets to go to Port Adelaide, given he's a South Australian boy, gets to go home, and I wish him all the best. Now, I will say at the outset that I think giving up Corey Durden and a future second for Ben Ainsworth is a slight overpay. I think the future second is probably about right on its own, so giving a player adds to that cost. The other side of that, though, which is not the side that I'm on, I've just said the side that I'm on, is that one, it frees up a list spot for us. So, someone else doesn't have to get kicked out for Ben Ainsworth to come in. The list spots automatically are drawn up there. The other thing is because they play the same position, there's a reasonable argument that Ainsworth coming in meant Durden wasn't going to get a game. As a result, his value you couldn't argue was super, super high, and therefore I think it's probably acceptable that, in my mind, Corey might be worth, a future third, but if you think that he's even more diminished, we're really not tossing much in there in terms of trade value. So to me, it's a little bit of an overpay. However, sometimes you've got to overpay. I think it's important to get aggressive to address the needs that you definitely have. Carlton's small forward stocks, especially forward pockets, half forwards are a bit better off with, but our forward pockets have needed addressing over time. I'm not going to pretend that Ben Ainsworth is Jamie Elliott or Toby Green or, prime Luke Breust or something, but I genuinely think he will instantly become our best small forward. He's kicked over 20 goals in 3 of the last 4 seasons. The year that he didn't kick over 20, he played 17 games for the year, so he had a little bit of an interrupted campaign, and has largely played in an average team for the first handful of years of his career. However, he was able to play 24 games this past season, keeping his spot in a team that made the second week of the finals. So even though he kicked just over 20 goals, as opposed to, say, a teammate like Ben Long, who kicked us 50 or 60 goals, he might not have had a monstrous year, but he was able to retain his spot in a talent-laden side. And that, to me, suggests that, the Suns coaching panel saw him doing what they were asking him to do. I think if he comes to us, we're going to settle him down as a forward pocket who occasionally goes on the ball. But his main role, I think, will either be kicking and creating goals. Whereas at the Suns in this last year, he was more a high half forward, so a little bit more burst up the ground. He has really good pace, is a very good tackler, and has very good foot skills. These are all things that we know that we need. If you compare him to Corey Durden specifically, he's about 6 centimetres taller and looks a bit more stout. They don't release up-to-date weight anymore, so, fair enough. But from what I could find, it looks like he's about 5-10 kilos heavier than him. So given I wouldn't say that Ainsworth sacrifices any pace, he's a bit more resilient. He consistently plays. And I think that sort of added bulk in close will help with our forward line. One thing that I think with a lot of our forwards is that they struggle to find time and space. And if you don't have space, then you probably need plus athleticism to get you out of it, whether it be strength to dispose of your man or a bit of extra pace. Ainsworth, as a small forward, is quite big for the position. He's very strong, very quick. I think in the parameters of our forward line, he adds a little bit more athleticism and a bit more doggedness than maybe we've had so far. I think he can easily come in and kick 20 goals again next year, but I would be hoping that he can kick 30 straight up. If he plays every game, so 24 games in a home and away season, kicking 30 straight up, just over a goal a game, I think is a very reasonable expectation to have. I think he will also help the rest of our smalls, as he will clearly be the best small forward in the team and therefore would attract the best defender. When we play Collingwood and you see Brayden Maynard go to Jesse, you know that Jesse's probably in for a bit of a tough day. But in this hypothetical forward line that I've got cooking up in my brain, Ben Ainsworth would probably get Brayden Maynard, or when we play Richmond, Nick Vlosten, which frees Jesse up to get the next best defender, and Moyer or Williams or whomever else is in there at the time. I think it just kind of helps to rebalance our forward line. It makes the defined roles a lot more obvious, because I think Ben will very clearly be our best small forward and most likely to be the small forward that gets to play closest to goals. Overall, a really good pickup, as it clearly addresses an area of need. And when you consider that we got Reidy and Chesser, in my opinion, for unders, I'm happy to swallow the slightly overinflated cost. To me, this is a big tick. Getting an area of need under wraps, awesome. If Ben can play 20 plus games next year, I bet any amount of money our small forward department will look a lot better. Great result. So, those are the three guys we've brought in so far. There's also a couple of trades that likely need to be done. The first of these is for Buku Khamis. Apparently, we had offered pick 41 and a future second round pick as two separate offerings, not together, for Buku, and the Dogs said no, which is why we then went off, took those draft picks and traded them as part of the Chesser and Ainsworth deals respectively. The Bulldogs list manager, Michael Regan, said on Trade Radio how Buku is really highly valued at a position of need and a product of their next-gen academy in a way to try to up his value. So you can't really see it. So 3 different factors there. My thing is, if he's a really valued member of your club, why didn't he play a full game after round 14 this year? In rounds 15 to 17, he was either the sub or the subbed off player. So, no full games for Buku after round 14, despite apparently being highly valued by them. Additionally, if you rate Buku's ability to fill an area of need, and the area he was referring to was key defender, why was he played as a forward for most of this season? The Next Gen Academy comment, I'm going to leave to the side, because that is obviously nice. People had a bit of heartache with losing Jack Silvani and, other players you lose that have sort of become a bit of the fabric of the club because of how they've come through. Buku's obviously, the Khamis name is not the Silvani name in terms of significance to the club, but, it is nice that, he was part of their development pathway. So I'll leave that to the side. But again, I would suggest that the words said by the Bulldogs list manager are not in keeping with the actions of the Bulldogs. If you truly valued him, he'd be played in his proper spot, and he'd also be played more regularly, especially because the Bulldogs have such vulnerability in their key defensive positions. I don't look at this as a knock on Buku because I think that the Bulldogs regularly mismanage their tall players, especially their key defenders. I think the fact that they threw him around a lot is probably why we have been able to get in front of him and get him to request a trade to Carlton, because we have pitched to him, we're going to play you as a key defender. I think for us, he will be excellent. I should probably just rein that in a bit. When I say excellent, guys, I don't mean all Australian. I mean for what I think we'll give up, he'll overperform. I think he could come in and, be a fringe best 22 guy. But it wouldn't surprise me if, say, by the end of the year, when everyone's back fit and healthy, our choice key defenders were Wiedering, Harry O'Farrell, Harry Dean, and Buku, sort of playing as a hybrid type with Harry Dean as well. So, I think it's a bit of brinksmanship from the Bulldogs. I really don't rate it because I just think that it's really piss poor, frankly, to come out in public and say, oh, we love this guy so much, and your actions don't back it up at all. It's very disingenuous, but, a Luke Beveridge run club, I'm not expecting a hell of a lot different. Hopefully this is just some talk from the Bulldogs, because I think ultimately the trade will get completed and it'll be something like our current pick 54 and a future third. Maybe we give both of them up and that'll do the deal on its own. I do think it'll get done, and I'll obviously review the trade once it occurs, if it occurs. But if it goes for what I've just suggested there, I think that would be a tick. Area of need, didn't give up too much, went out and got your guy. Not all clubs at St Kilda always get their guy. So it is important to me that we do our best to try to secure Buku, because we've made a commitment to him. If the Dogs say, no, we value him that highly, and they decide not to, that's absolutely fine, in the sense that Carlton has still tried their best effort. That's all we need to give, is our best effort. Good stuff. The last and biggest part of the player update that I wanted to touch on is obviously Charlie Curnow. So let's get into it. I'm personally really happy with how Carlton has been handling this so far. Chris Davies on Trade Radio said that we are not looking to shop Charlie. So we are apparently not making counter offers, and instead we are just rejecting offers. I really like this. Whenever I talk to this, with my friends or my dad, the way I always kind of think about it is, if someone knocked on your door tomorrow and say you lived in $1 million house and, they've gone, look, I really like your place, I'd love to buy it from you. What do you reckon it's worth? And you respond $1 million. And they go, okay, how about I give you $1 million today? You are well within your rights to say, well, I wasn't really looking at moving. Sweeten the pot a bit, and then maybe I'll want to move. If you did it for 1.5 million, maybe I could be bothered to, box everything up. Moving's a pain in the ass. And do all the rigmarole just to access that additional capital. But otherwise, if it's just for market, I'll just wait till I'm ready to sell, because I'll get $1 million then anyway. This is how I feel like we are treating the Charlie situation, in the sense of, we don't need to proactively shop. We don't need to drum up a market. The market obviously already exists. And participating with the trade offers in a really meaningful way of, oh, you've offered us this, Geelong, what can we do to make it happen? You may as well just sit back saying no. I also really like that Chris Davies said that he thinks the relationship between Carlton and Charlie can be repaired. He has 4 years left to go on a deal, and saying things like this publicly puts a lot of pressure on those that have approached Charlie to try to, prize him out of Carlton, to be able to actually get it done. Because Carlton they may very well be bluffing, but the message they're putting out publicly is, we don't need to trade him, just like that house that you live in. You don't need to trade that. You don't need to sell your house. You're not trying to move suburbs at this time. So if we are going to, make it worth our while, because otherwise any problems that we think we may have at the minute, we think we can fix it. Really well managed on the public front. from Chris Davies and co so far. I wanted to go over the offers that have been, leaked to the media, the public offers, and we'll start with the Cats. The Cats have offered 3 first-round picks, and as a few people have already commented on, this offer sounds a lot better than it is. Their first pick this year is currently 19, before any bid matches that will occur on draft night. So it's going to be at least 20, because I believe the Suns and Brisbane and Harry Dean, the Suns and Brisbane, as well as Carlton, the player being Harry Dean, all have guys that will be bid on and taken in the first round of the draft. So that's at least 3 spots it's going to go back. It may be more. You can assume that their first pick next year will be, very similar to what it is this year, given that they would be getting Charlie without sacrificing any players. So you take a team that made the grand final and add Charlie Curnow. There's no guarantee they'll be exactly as good because, people's form fluctuates and all of that sort of stuff. But you'd imagine they'd be top 4 again. And if that's the case, it'll be another pick that by the time Father, Son and Academy bidding is done and compensatory picks, it'll probably be in the 20s. The third first round pick for the 2027 draft will probably actually be in the 30s, given Tasmania gets something like 10 of the first 20 picks. So again, if they were to finish top 4, add 10 odd picks to where that would fall. And, if it's 20 this year, it would mean that it would be 30 in that year. So if we're being as charitable as possible, we would be looking at 3 picks in the 20s, 1 in each of the next 3 drafts. Just to go back to 2020, the Jeremy Cameron deal from Geelong, it got the Giants pick 13, 15, and 20 in that year's draft. So they didn't even have to wait years to use it. The Giants gave back Geelong 2 future seconds as part of that trade. So it wasn't just 13, 15 and 20 for Jeremy Cameron. There was a little bit of handicapping. But a key difference there is that Jeremy was out of contract at the time. He was actually a free agent. The Giants matched and then said, let's do a deal. Charlie has 4 years to go. We do not have to move him. As I said in my short during the week, nice try, Geelong. Try again. If this is the best offer that you have, you will not get Charlie. And if this is as far as they wanted to go with the negotiations, Mackie said on Trade Radio this week, Mackie being Geelong's list manager for those who weren't aware, that he expected Carlton to knock this offer back. I don't even know why he made it if that's the case. But here we are. However, I am happy that they've made an offer that at least sounds good, because I think it puts pressure on Sydney, whose public offer is 2 first-round picks and an undisclosed player. I think in a lot of ways, this is a better offer than Geelong's, because at least their first pick this year is 11. However, I still think it's nowhere near enough to getting it done. A curious thing is that some of the players that have been thrown up in the media are guys like James Rowbottom and Ollie Florent, and of course Will Haywood. It's since been reported that Rowbottom and Florent won't be going anywhere. Rowbottom, I believe, by his manager, and Florent, Kaltoumi came out and said that he has no desire to leave the Swans and he has 4 more years to go on a deal. That leaves Will Haywood, but I think that it's safe to assume that if the offer was 2 first-round picks and Will Haywood, if that was enough to get it done, it would either be done or there'd be more stuff leaking to the media of, this is the core of the deal and now it's just pick shuffling. What's been leaked to the media is that package of 2 first-round picks and an undisclosed player is nowhere near it. So if the undisclosed player is Will Haywood, according to Carlton, it's nowhere near happening. So that makes me think that if they're going to up the offer, Haywood's not going to be a part of it, or at least he's not going to be the most significant part of it. Tom Morris reported, I think it was Friday afternoon, that Sydney is intending to up its offer again, including improving the number of draft picks and changing the player configuration. Just to be clear, configuration is my words, not Tom's. Whether this means there'll be more players added or the calibre of the player will be changed, i.e. increased, is yet to be seen. However, I think it's fair to say that pick 11, a future first, and this undisclosed player, if that's not really getting it done, then adding a 2027 first rounder or a steak knife player, like for example, Ollie Florent or Braden Campbell, one of those types, I don't think that's going to change anything. I think the basis of the deal being 2 first round picks, even if one of them's pick 11 this year, and that undisclosed player, again, as a placeholder, we can say Will Hayward. If that's nowhere near getting it done, adding a first round pick 2 drafts from now, I suppose, or just like an average role player, I don't think it's really going to make any difference. This has me maintaining my hope that one of the 4 players that media types have branded as untouchables are in play. I've previously said that Heaney is the face of Sydney and Warner is a flight risk to Carlton. So even if he agreed to a long-term deal, I don't think I'd want him because I'd be worried that halfway through he goes, all right, I want to go back to Perth. Which leaves, of the guys called untouchables, Nick Blakey and Errol Goulden. I'm going to sit here and keep dreaming that it's Errol. I don't know anything, but the trajectory of how this story has been covered is on the incline in terms of the perceived value of Charlie and what would be needed to get it done. I remember when this sort of first came out, and I think it was Code Sport said something like a first round pick and Braden Campbell. Well, we've blown past that in terms of what the media thinks is necessary to get the job done. I'm pretty sure on Trade Radio, Brad Johnson and Damo played a game and they got to something like Nick Blakey and 2 first round picks, and that still wouldn't be enough. If the media is reporting on it that way, it gives me hope that they might be aware that a Godfather type offer is coming down from Sydney, but they don't know it conclusively enough to be able to actually report on it yet. If, the temperature in the room has changed to suggest, oh, no, this is only going to happen. 1, Sydney's desperate enough, and 2, it's only going to happen if they really, give Carlton the world. Well, then potentially they know something that we don't. And I think that it is enough to have legitimate hope that someone like Errol Goulden could be part of this deal. I want to be really clear again. I do not know a thing. I'm just piecing it together based on the offers so far, not good enough, and they've either got to find some really, really high draft picks, which they don't have access to, or a player, which they definitely have access to. We'll see how it plays out, but hopefully we can land a star in return for Charlie. Otherwise, he might be staying put. With all of that said and done, few loose ends to go over. The players are in this table. How many of them are there? There's 7 of them. Are either guys that have been mooted for trade, or they're out of contract, or if you're Mitch McGovern, you're both of them. There's not been a lot made about these 7 guys in the past week or so. I still expect Akers and Gov to be gone. However, Chera I've cooled on. A lot of people gave me some feedback saying that they'd be really surprised if Chera left. And I did not disagree with them. I did not agree with them at the time. However, I think I'm starting to come to their side of things. Given that I think a move for a guy like him might require, a fair bit more capital than Akers or McGovern to get done. I think if it was going to happen, the media would have reported on a bit more at this time. So given the silence, I'm assuming that, maybe the Chera deal's not going to happen. However, Ben Ainsworth wasn't mentioned even before the draft began. I reckon 2 days ago was when we sort of first heard that Ben Ainsworth might be a possibility. And then, boom, we swoop on him and we're able to get him. So you just never know. But the lack of talk on a guy like Chera, who does actually have a bit of a name in the league, has a bit of currency, does probably make me think that, yeah, it's not really going to come to much more. Akers and Gov I still probably expect to go, though. I do just want to quickly say that I really appreciate Adam Chera's comments at the BNF. I know that public statements by people involved in the AFL don't mean a hell of a lot, but I thought he seemed very sincere when he was talking about how there's no other group that he'd want to be a part of. He came third in the BNF and he was leading at the end of round 19 before he missed the rest of the year with injury. He very well could have won the thing if he played the year out. He seemed, to me, really sincere. He seemed really authentic. And he seemed really grateful and sort of humbled by the award. I thought it was really nice, honestly. Again, I know public statements don't mean a lot. We'll find out if it's just spin. But I really appreciated what he had to say. And knowing that he is one of the guys that was a bit discontented throughout the year, those sorts of guys, if they end up staying, they need to recommit to the club and to, driving standards and not being a malcontent. If he's now hanging around, I have a lot of confidence that he'll be a professional and that he does sincerely want to be here. A couple of days to play out. We'll see if anything happens. For the time being, no. Just wanted to flag how much I appreciated what he had to say. That leaves Flynn Young, Harry Charlson, Rob Monaghan and Will White out of contract. It's really hard to predict who will stay around because a lot of it will depend on, if there's anyone else traded out or in, and who of these guys that are out of contract are we looking to recontract. But I thought it's still sort of worth doing the exercise. So our list last year was full. Since the end of the year, 7 guys have gone out. Alex Cincotta, Tom De Koning, Sam Doherty, Corey Durden, Orazio Fantasia, Harry Lemmy and Jack Silvani. 3 have come in. Liam Reidy, Ben Ainsworth, Campbell Chesser. So that's a differential of 4 spots still available. Very likely to come in Buku, and then through the draft, Harry Dean and Jack Ison. I'm very confident are guys that we will get. This leaves us with 1 more list spot, but we need to consider, obviously, things like the Charlie move. If we lose Charlie and were only to get 1 player in return, we would still have 1 available list spot. In addition to that, we have our current draft hand, which includes picks 10 and 19. These are more than enough to get the bids for Dean and Ison done. So I would imagine there's still a prospect that we might even draft a few more players. Therefore, without really changing anything, there is enough room left on our list to recontract everyone on this table. Everyone in this table, even if we don't trade anyone else out. If we just get Harry Dean, Jack Ison and Buku, we would still have 1 spare list spot, even if all of these guys were kept. So it'll obviously come down to where we see our needs in terms of depth. And given that 3 of these guys are very young and the other one is an Irish bloke, so a bit of a project player. He's also quite young, but given that, it'll depend how much they think these guys might have the potential to be able to develop into AFL-worthy players on a consistent basis. I don't want to make any predictions about Harry Charlson or Rob Monahan because, frankly, I don't know enough about them. I saw them both play a bit in the VFL. They look like they have some traits. I think Flynn Young and Will White ultimately will be safe in the end, but remains to be seen. Anyone who stayed to the end, I just wanted to thank you very much. It's been a bit of a slog, and I can't wait for my videos to get back to a more manageable 20 or 30 minutes. If you like what I'm doing, please give me a like or a subscribe. Helps me get into the algorithm and get out there to more Blues fans. If you want to engage, push back, agree, disagree, give me some ideas, please leave a comment. Thank you so much for watching, and as always, go Blues!